I was in the middle of a client meeting when the lobby doors burst open with such force that it turned heads. Standing there was Karen Miller, the president of our neighborhood HOA. Her face was flushed, wearing what could only be described as vengeful delight as she stormed across the marble floor in her designer heels, pointing a manicured finger directly at me. My clients looked on in confusion, and I braced myself for what was to come. "You're fired, effective immediately," Karen announced loudly, her voice echoing throughout the lobby. "Pack your things and get out of my building within the hour." My cheeks burned as the entire lobby turned toward us. My clients shifted uncomfortably, but I managed to stay composed. Karen stood there with her arms crossed, a smug smile spreading across her face, clearly relishing my public humiliation. But what she didn't know was that I had something that made me stand tall and meet her gaze without flinching. I simply nodded and said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding, Karen." Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. "The only misunderstanding is that you thought you could stay employed here after your pathetic performance," she sneered. "Now get out before I call security." Just 6 weeks earlier, I'd been a modest financial advisor in this very office building. It wasn't glamorous, but I enjoyed helping clients manage investments and plan for retirement. Karen, however, made the workplace unbearable. As the office manager, she micromanaged everything, from the temperature in the break room to which parking spaces employees could use. If you dared question her authority, you'd find yourself written up or suddenly facing surprise HOA violation notices at home. I had watched talented colleagues quit rather than deal with her petty tyranny. But things had changed for me. 2 months ago, my uncle passed away, leaving me a substantial inheritance that I decided to invest in real estate. When I found out the very building I worked in was up for sale, I saw an opportunity. I formed a holding company to keep my identity hidden and made an offer that was quickly accepted. The closing was scheduled for the following week, but I kept it confidential, continuing to work as usual while the paperwork was finalized. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior grew more erratic. She sent daily emails about workplace decorum violations and installed security cameras aimed directly at employees. At HOA meetings, she pushed arbitrary rules, fining residents for the smallest infractions. One incident saw a 70-year-old widow in tears after receiving a $500 fine for unapproved garden plants. Karen's control over the office escalated as well. Last week, she cornered me in the break room, accusing me of violating office decorum by bringing clients through the front entrance instead of the side door. "This isn't some low-rent operation," she hissed, jabbing her finger at my chest. "Maybe if you showed more professionalism, you wouldn't be stuck in that tiny office forever." What she didn't realize was that I had just signed the final paperwork that morning. The building was officially mine. So there I was, standing in the lobby while Karen demanded I leave immediately. I felt the weight of the deed in my pocket. I gathered my client's paperwork, stood up calmly, and apologized for the interruption. I told my clients quietly, "Perhaps we can reschedule for tomorrow morning." After they left, Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I've been waiting to do that for months. You have no ambition, no vision. People like you are just stepping stones for people like me." I nodded, maintaining my professional demeanor, and walked toward the exit. I pulled out my phone and deliberately called my lawyer within earshot. "Hi, James. Yes, everything went through. The building is officially mine as of 9 a.m. this morning. Could you please have the new management notices prepared for tomorrow? Thank you." I glanced back to see Karen frozen in place, her mouth slightly open as the implications of my conversation dawned on her. Without another word, I walked out. The next morning, I arrived early with the property management team. We posted notices throughout the building. Effective immediately, Smith Properties is the new owner of Oakwood Professional Center. All building management inquiries should be directed to the new property manager, David Williams. At precisely 9 a.m., I watched on the security monitors as Karen approached the main entrance and swiped her access card. The light stayed red and the doors remained locked. She tried again, then began pounding on the glass. The security guard approached and pointed to the new management notice. Karen's face contorted with anger as she read it. David eventually let her in to explain the situation, but Karen stormed past him and headed straight for her office. To her shock, the locks had been changed. A small crowd of employees had gathered in the lobby, watching the scene unfold with barely concealed fascination. "Where is he?" Karen demanded, spinning around to face the crowd. I stepped forward from my position near the elevator. "Good morning, Karen. I believe David was explaining the change in management," I said calmly. Karen laughed, but it sounded more like a strangled gasp. "This is some kind of sick joke. You can't afford to buy this building," she sputtered. I smiled gently. "Actually, Smith Properties is my holding company. I purchased the building last week, and the transfer of ownership became official yesterday morning, about an hour before you tried to fire me." The color drained from Karen's face as she processed it. "That's impossible. You're just a financial advisor. You drive a 10-year-old Honda." "I believe in living below my means," I replied, calm as ever. "But that's neither here nor there. As the new owner, I've hired a professional management company to oversee building operations. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately." Karen's shock quickly gave way to rage. "You can't do this to me. I've managed this building for 7 years. I'll sue you for wrongful termination." "You're welcome to speak with my attorneys," I said, handing her a business card. "But you should know that I have extensive documentation of your management practices, including testimony from employees about harassment and intimidation. Now, I need to ask you to vacate the premises. Your personal belongings will be packed and delivered to your home address." That's when Karen completely lost control. She began screaming obscenities, her face turning bright red. She grabbed a potted plant from the reception desk and hurled it across the lobby, narrowly missing an elderly client. Then she turned to the reception computer and shoved it off the desk, sending it crashing to the floor. "This is my building," she shrieked. "Mine! You're all fired, every single one of you." David immediately called security, but Karen wasn't finished. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, I'm still the HOA president. I'll make your life a living nightmare. I'll find every violation on your property and fine you until you're bankrupt." Security arrived quickly, but when they tried to escort her out, she slapped one of the guards across the face. At that point, David had no choice but to call 911. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived and attempted to reason with Karen, who was now barricaded behind the reception desk, threatening anyone who came near. When the officers approached, Karen tried to shove past them toward me, screaming that she would destroy me. The officers had no choice but to restrain her, and despite her struggles and protests, she was handcuffed and informed she was under arrest for disorderly conduct, destruction of property, assault, and trespassing. As Karen was led toward the exit, her threats echoed through the silent lobby. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving only the echoes of her rage. The next week, Karen appeared in court, where she was charged with 3 misdemeanors. The judge, unimpressed with her continued insistence that she was the victim, sentenced her to 100 hours of community service, a $7,000 fine for damages, and a restraining order preventing her from coming within 100 feet of the building. The final blow came from the HOA board. In an emergency meeting, with footage of Karen's arrest circulating among residents, the board voted unanimously to remove her as president. Karen collapsed into her chair, wordlessly, as her last vestige of power was stripped away. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen was completely speechless.